Raw ISS thinks he's a human. What he does on the couch has blown up the internet. What separates humans from animals? Intelligence, the ability to speak. But what if an animal starts to think it's human? This story didn't begin in a science lab. It began on an old, worn-out couch in a remote house on the edge of the forest. And the main character is a lynx. A huge wild lynx with tufts on its ears and the eyes of an old sage. Its huge, soft paw, designed for silent steps in the snow, now lay on the TV remote control. Alex looked at it and couldn't believe it. He, a quiet recluse with a huge secret, had unwittingly created something the world had never seen before. And he didn't know that his small, cozy world was about to explode. Before we continue, let us know which city you are from. We are interested to know where our videos are being watched. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your rating. It motivates us to make new and interesting videos. Well, let's get started. Summer mornings in Alexei Volkov's house always began the same way. Not with an alarm clock, but with a heavy, warm weight that gently rested on his chest. Alex opened his eyes and saw two amber planets right in front of him. Leo's eyes. The lynx didn't purr like a normal cat. He made a low, vibrating sound, like a transformer humming. It was his way of saying good morning. Alex, a 28-year-old videographer, found him a year ago. A tiny, half-dead ball of fur next to the body of his mother, who had been caught in a poacher's trap. He couldn't leave him there. He fed him with a pipette, nursed him back to health. And now this ball of fur weighed nearly 30 kilograms and considered Alex his family. Leo didn't know the forest. His forest was the living room. His hunting grounds were the carpet where he chased sunbeams. And his prey was the pieces of choice beef that Alex cut up every morning. Alex lived in constant fear. He had chosen this house on purpose. It was the last one on the street, with only a wall of century-old forest behind it. There were almost no neighbors. But the fear never went away. The fear that someone would hear, see, report. That people in uniform would come and take his Leo, his strange, almost tame beast, away to a zoo cage. Or worse. So he worked from home, editing videos about the very wilderness his pet had been deprived of. Leo often sat nearby, resting his massive head on Alex's shoulder, watching the screen with interest. Sometimes he even tried to help, touching the mouse with his paw or trying to catch a bird flying across the screen. Alex was used to it. For him, it was normal. He forgot that what was normal for him was absolute madness for the rest of the world. On that July evening, everything changed. Alex finished a difficult project, got paid, and allowed himself to relax. He ordered pizza, opened a can of soda, and collapsed on the couch to watch a TV series. Leo, as usual, settled down next to him. Taking up half the couch, he didn't behave like a beast, but like a full member of the family who also had the right to relax. Alex laughed and handed him the remote. "Here, you choose what we're going to watch, boss." It was a joke, just a tired man being silly. But Leo slowly, very carefully, covered the remote with his huge paw and pressed it. The channel changed. Alex froze. Leo pressed it again and again. He kept changing channels until a documentary about falcons appeared on the screen. The lynx froze, his ears with tufts twitching. He raised himself up, sat almost upright like a human, and began to watch the bird's flight intently. And then he did something that made Alex grab his phone. Leo began carefully, with the tips of his claws, to try to catch the falcon right on the screen. As he did so, he made quiet, funny cooing sounds. Alex filmed, choking with laughter. It was too incredible, too human. He filmed for only 30 seconds. a short video in which a huge predator behaves like a funny child. His hand reached for the publish button. He posted the video on his little-used social media account, where he had about 150 followers. Just for friends. He captioned it simply, "I think my cat has taken over the house." He didn't even mention that it was a lynx. He figured everyone would understand that it was just a large cat of a rare breed. Then he turned off his phone and went to bed, feeling completely happy for the first time in a long time. He didn't know that he had just lit the fuse of a bomb that would blow his life to pieces. The awakening was abrupt, not from Leo's warm weight, but from the continuous vibration of the phone on the nightstand. Alex reached for it in his sleep and was blinded by the light of the screen. Hundreds of notifications. Thousands. He opened the app and his heart skipped a beat. 30 seconds of video with Leo and the remote. Views, 3 million. Reposts, 200,000. Comments were pouring in every second. His phone was burning up with private messages, friend requests, and newsfeed notifications. The hashtag #ZarkLynxMan was trending worldwide. People were going crazy. Some were gushing, calling Leo the smartest cat in the world. Others were arguing about his breed. And the most observant were already writing, "Guys, this isn't a cat. It's a real lynx." Panic washed over Alex like an icy wave. He jumped out of bed and looked at Leo, who was sleeping peacefully on the sofa. The very sofa that had made him a star. What had he done? His secret was out. Now they would definitely come. He should have deleted the video, but it was too late. It had spread across the internet like a virus. It was copied, reposted, discussed on forums and in news feeds. By noon, he received a call from a federal television channel. Then another one. Then a famous blogger with millions of followers wrote to him. Everyone wanted to know who he was, where he lived, and what kind of incredible animal it was. Alex ignored the calls and messages. He paced around the house like a caged animal. He had betrayed Leo. He had put him in terrible danger for a moment of laughter. But then, scrolling through the comments, he saw something else. Under one of the most popular posts with his video, someone had organized a fundraiser. "Let's help the owner buy this king his own TV." People were donating money. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. The amount was growing before his eyes. And then a desperate, crazy thought popped into Alex's head. What if this wasn't the end? What if this was a chance? A chance to make money. Not for pizza and soda, but for something he could only dream of. A huge, proper, safe enclosure for Leo. A hectare of his own forest, fenced off with a high fence. Legalization for their lives. He could turn this nightmare into salvation. With trembling hands, Alex created a new account. Leo's official channel. And he uploaded another short video. Leo chasing a sunbeam. Within an hour, 100,000 people subscribed to the channel. Alex stared at the numbers and felt fear battling hope inside him. At the same time, 100 kilometers from Alex's home, his video was being watched by completely different people. In the office of a veterinary clinic near a nature reserve, Elena Petrova, a woman with intelligent, stern eyes, showed the video to her boss. "Look, Sergei Ivanovich. It's a Eurasian lynx. Judging by its size, it's a young male. And it lives in a house. It's sitting on the sofa. This is a disaster." Elena saw nothing cute about it. She saw a wild animal whose psyche had been distorted, an animal that could not survive in the wild, but was not domesticated either. It was a ticking time bomb. "We have to find it," she said firmly, "before something bad happens." She wasn't motivated by a desire for punishment, but by a desire to help an animal that had no choice in its fate. She began searching for information about the author of the video. Further away, in a trendy Moscow studio, a man in a camouflage jacket was watching the video of Leo on a big screen. It was Stanislav Kolmsky, author of the popular blog Guardian of Nature. He had built his image on an uncompromising fight for animal rights. In reality, he was a cynical and calculating businessman who had found a gold mine in exploiting city dwellers' feelings of guilt toward nature. When he saw Leo, he smelled blood, the smell of hype. "There he is," he said to his cameraman, "our main villain for the next month, the torturer who broke a wild animal for likes. We're going to destroy him." His face wore the smile of a predator who had found easy prey. He had no doubt that his army of followers would happily tear this unknown guy to pieces. Stanislav began preparing his first expose video. But there was a third party that Alex didn't even suspect. In a smoke-filled hut on the edge of the village, a few kilometers from Alex's house, two men were watching the same video on the cracked screen of an old smartphone. They were poachers. Sullen, silent men for whom the forest was not a home, but a source of income. One of them poked the screen with a dirty finger. "Look, Petrovich, that's Liutaya's cub, the one we missed last year when she was caught in a trap. I recognized it by the spots on its side." The second man looked closely. "It's true. Look how big it's grown. The fur must be magnificent. And most importantly, it's tame. It'll come right up to you." A greedy light lit up in their dull eyes. An internet star, a unique animal. Its fur could fetch a fortune. They knew this forest like the back of their hand. Finding the house on the outskirts where the eccentric with the tame lynx lived was only a matter of time for them. All the pieces were in place. Alex, intoxicated by sudden hope, continued to post videos of Leo, unaware of the ring closing in on him. Three completely different forces were already moving toward his secluded home, each along a different road. The veterinarian who wanted to save, the blogger who wanted to destroy, and the poachers who wanted to kill. And on the driveway to his house, the headlights of an approaching car appeared. The car stopped at the gate. Alex's heart sank into his stomach. It was them, the surveillance service. It was over. He grabbed Leo, who was looking curiously out the window, and literally shoved him into the bedroom, closing the door. "Quiet, Leo, quiet, please," he whispered, though his hands were shaking. He ran to the window and peeked through the crack in the curtain. It wasn't the police who got out of the car. It was a woman, alone, dressed in simple traveling clothes, with a sports bag slung over her shoulder. She walked confidently toward his door. Alex froze. Who was it? A journalist? A crazy fan? The doorbell rang sharply and insistently. Alex took a deep breath and went to open the door, ready for anything. Standing on the doorstep was a woman in her 30s, with a stern but not angry face, and her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her gaze was direct and appraising, like a doctor's. "Alexei Volkov?" she asked. Her voice was calm and confident. Alex nodded silently. "My name is Elena Petrova. I'm a veterinarian from the Regional Nature Reserve, specializing in large predators. May I come in?" Alex was taken aback. A veterinarian. That was both better and worse than the police. He reluctantly stepped aside, letting her into the house. Elena entered and immediately looked around. Her gaze was not judgmental, but professional. She noted everything: the sturdy screens on the windows, the absence of breakable objects, the claw marks on the door frame. "I saw your video, Alexei," she began, stopping in the middle of the living room. "So did the whole country, and I'm not here to file a report. I'm here because I'm concerned about the animal." A discontented guttural sound came from behind the bedroom door. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Can I take a look at him?" There was nowhere to go. Alex opened the door. Leo came out, squinting in the light. Seeing the stranger, he didn't growl. He approached and sniffed Elena's shoes curiously, then rubbed against her leg like a giant domestic cat. Elena crouched down, making no sudden movements. She wasn't looking at Alex, but at the animal. She spoke quietly to him, her professional tone replaced by one of surprised gentleness. "You're incredible," she whispered. She spent almost 2 hours with them. She examined Leo, checked his teeth and fur, and asked Alex about his diet and habits. Alex, seeing her genuine interest and lack of aggression, gradually relaxed and told her everything. How he found him, how he nursed him back to health, how Leo became the only person close to him. Elena listened silently, without interrupting. When he finished, she sighed heavily. "Physically, he's in perfect condition, Alexei. You take excellent care of him. But there's a problem, and it's much more serious. He doesn't know he's a lynx. His instincts are suppressed. He's completely dependent on you. If you release him into the forest now, he'll die within 24 hours. He doesn't know how to hunt. He's afraid of other animals. But keeping him here, it's illegal and dangerous. For both of you." Alex nodded grimly. "I know. I thought if the channel made money, I'd build him a huge enclosure, here on the property, so everything would be legal." Elena looked at him sympathetically. "That would cost millions and dozens of permits. But even if you succeed, you've set a precedent. You've shown the whole world that a wild predator can be turned into a cute little cat with a remote control. Do you realize how many idiots are now going to go into the woods looking for their own lynxes just because they saw Leo?" At that moment, Alex received a notification on his phone. His friend had sent him a link with one word: "Hang in there." Alex opened it. The face of Stanislav Komsky appeared on the screen. Guardian of nature. The video was professionally made. Alarming music played. Slow-motion shots of Leo, taken from Alex's video, were edited to make it look like the animal was pacing in a cage. Then Stanislav himself appeared on screen, against the backdrop of a wild forest. He spoke in a rehearsed, confident voice, full of righteous anger. "Friends, you've all seen these cute videos. You like the cat watching TV. But I'm going to show you the truth. Behind this cute picture lies a tragedy. The tragedy of a wild animal whose sky, forest, and freedom have been taken away by a selfish man. Turned into a toy for hype and views. This is not a home. This is a prison. And its owner is not a savior. He is a jailer." Stanislav urged his followers to take action. Demand that the authorities immediately remove the hostage. Write complaints to all authorities. "We will not let our forest brother be wronged," he concluded dramatically, raising his fist. Elena watched the video over Alex's shoulder. When it ended, she shook her head. "It started. This man is very dangerous. He won't stop." Alex opened the comments under his latest video with Leo. Where there had been thousands of enthusiastic comments, now everything was drowned in hatred. "Torturer. Freedom for the lynx. Burn in hell, animal killer." Threats, curses. People who had been admiring Leo an hour ago now wished death upon his owner. Alex's eyes darkened. His world, which had only just begun to find hope, was crumbling before his eyes. Suddenly, his whole idea with the channel seemed like a monstrous mistake. He hadn't just revealed his secret, he had painted a huge target on his door and handed the weapon to a crazed mob. While Alex read the comments in horror at the edge of the forest, a couple of 100 meters from his house. Petrovich lowered his old army binoculars. He saw the vet's car drive away from the house. "Did you see that, Kolyan?" he said to his young partner. "They're already on his case. Vets, journalists, probably. There's a commotion. It's not smart to go in now. They'll catch us right away." Kolyan, a nervous guy with shifty eyes, took a drag on a cheap cigarette. "What should we do, Petrovich? Wait?" "Wait," the old man grunted. "Let them fight it out. These bloggers, these defenders. The noise will die down, but the beast will remain. We'll get what's ours. Quietly and without fuss. The main thing is to choose the right moment." He raised his binoculars again, studying the house. A flimsy fence. No bars on the living room windows. He was already forming a plan in his head. Simple and effective. Alex was restless all the next day. He drew all the curtains and flinched at every sound. The hatred on the internet had reached a fever pitch. Someone had started a petition demanding that the Lynx be saved from its domestic tyrant, and it was rapidly gaining signatures. Alex was devastated. He was ready to delete everything and go back into hiding, but he knew it was too late. The genie was out of the bottle. He sat in the dark, hugging Leo, who didn't understand why his owner had stopped playing with him, and felt trapped. And then, among the hundreds of angry messages, he saw one that was completely different. It was from the producer of the country's main evening talk show. "Alexei, hello. We see what kind of harassment you're facing. We want to give you a chance to tell your side of the story. The whole country will hear you. We are offering you to be the main guest on our live broadcast. Of course, for a very substantial fee." Alex read the message several times. A fee, the amount was so large that it took his breath away. It would be enough not just for an enclosure. It would be enough to build a small rehabilitation center. Live on air. A chance to tell everything as it was. To show people the real Leo, not that miserable animal from the guard video. He immediately dialed Elena's number. "I've been offered to appear on television, live," he blurted out, overcome with excitement. "I can explain everything, and they'll pay me. Elena, they'll pay so much that—" He didn't have time to finish. "Alexei, no!" she interrupted sharply. "Don't do it. Don't you understand? They're using you. They'll turn your story into a circus, a freak show. You'll put Leo under the spotlights like a trained monkey. It will be the last straw. After that, no one will listen to you, and they will never leave you alone." "But this is my only chance," Alex almost shouted. "It's not a chance. It's a trap," Elena replied firmly. They argued for several minutes. Alex saw it as salvation. She saw it as ultimate disaster. Hanging up the phone, he was left alone with his choice. Fear fought with desperate hope inside him. He looked at Leo, who was lying quietly at his feet, and realized that he had to make a decision. Right now. Just as he reached for his phone to write a reply to the producer, a new notification flashed on the screen. It was another post from Guardian of Nature. This time it wasn't a video. It was a photo. A photo of his house taken from the edge of the forest, taken with a telephoto lens, and underneath it, in red letters, "This is the prison where the torturer is holding his hostage. I cannot publish the exact address due to legal reasons. But our followers are smart people. They will find it. And I believe that true defenders of nature know what to do when the law is powerless." Alex felt the blood drain from his veins. This was no longer the internet. This was a direct, undisguised threat. He looked out the dark window toward the forest, and it seemed to him that dozens of invisible eyes were staring at him from the darkness. And they were not filled with curiosity. but with cold, determined hatred. The phone fell from his hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. Leo looked up, alarmed. But Alex didn't see him. He stared at the black glass of the window, and it seemed to him that the forest had come to life. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves now sounded like a threat. They knew where he lived. The photo was real, taken very recently. Someone had been here, watching. And now hundreds, thousands of angry people were looking at his house. Some of them, the most insane, might decide that righteous anger gave them the right to do anything. Alex rushed to the door and turned the key in the lock twice. Then he checked the latch again. He walked around the house, pulling the curtains tighter, turning his refuge into a dark, stuffy box. Fear was no longer abstract, no longer digital. It had become physical. It smelled of pine needles and danger coming from the forest outside the window. There was no choice left. Hiding was pointless. They had already found him. The only way to defend himself was to attack, to come out into the open, to turn his weakness into strength. He picked up the phone from the floor, the message from the TV channel still glowing on the trembling screen. He dialed Elena's number. "They've published a photo of my house," he said into the receiver without preamble, his voice hollow and strained. "They've set their fanatics on me." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. "Alexei," Elena finally said, her voice steely. "Pack your things, yours and the animals. I'll be right there. We have a service house in the reserve. No one will find you there. We need to wait it out." "No," Alex snapped. "I'm not running away. I didn't do anything wrong. I accepted the TV channel's offer. I'll go on live TV." "Alexei, this is madness," Elena exploded. "They'll eat you alive. They'll turn you into a laughingstock. And after such a scandal, Leo will definitely be taken away from you by court order. And if I hide, they'll take him away without any trial," Alex almost shouted. "Defenders like that guard will come and just break down the door. This is my only chance, Elena, to tell everything as it is, and to earn money for his future. I have to do this. I'm not asking you for help. I just wanted you to know." He hung up without waiting for a reply. His hands were no longer shaking. Fear was replaced by cold, desperate determination. He wrote a short "I agree" to the producer. The reply came a minute later. "Great. The broadcast is the day after tomorrow. Get ready, Alexei. Our camera crew will be coming tomorrow to prepare." The next day turned into a surreal dream. Alex's quiet, secluded house was filled with strangers. They carried wires, set up lights, and installed cameras. The living room, where Leo loved to sleep on the couch, was turned into a film studio. Leo, frightened by the commotion, hid in his bedroom and refused to come out. Alex felt like an exhibit in a museum. The director gave him instructions on how to sit and where to look. The makeup artist tried to cover the dark circles under his eyes. He just nodded, mechanically following orders and thinking about one thing. This has to work. The news that the Lynx jailer would appear on prime time on the country's main channel blew up the internet with renewed force. Stanislav Kolmsky immediately recorded an emergency video. "They've gone too far," he shouted into the camera, his face contorted with rage. "This animal torturer isn't just tormenting a beast, he's decided to make money off him, to put on a circus show for the whole country. We can't let this happen. Everyone in Moscow and the surrounding area, everyone who cares about the fate of this forest prisoner. The day after tomorrow, we have to be there. At his house. We'll give him a live broadcast he'll remember for the rest of his life. We'll free Leo." He named the approximate area and called on his followers to coordinate in a closed chat. This was no longer just a call for harassment. It was a call to storm the place. At the same time, Kolyan was buying vodka and canned meat in the village store. Petrovich was waiting for him outside, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette. "Well, what's going on?" he asked when his partner came out. "The whole internet is talking about it," Kolyan said excitedly. "That weirdo with the links is going to be on TV tomorrow. Live straight from his house." Petrovich narrowed his eyes. His brain, accustomed to thinking in terms of ambushes and traps, instantly assessed the situation. Live broadcast. That meant lights, cameras, noise. All the attention of the owner and everyone around him would be focused on one place, the living room. The rest of the house and the yard would be left unattended. The perfect moment. "Tomorrow, then," he said, throwing away his cigarette butt. "All right. Tomorrow we'll pay him a visit. While he's there showing off in front of the camera, we'll sneak in from the backyard, and we'll take what's rightfully ours." The evening of the live broadcast arrived. Alex's house was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. The generator outside rattled, flooding the yard with unnaturally bright light. Alex sat on his sofa, which now seemed foreign to him. A tiny microphone hung from his clothes. An earpiece beeped in his ear, through which he could hear the director's commands from the mobile station. Leo, who had been persuaded with difficulty to come out of his bedroom, lay at his feet. The animal sensed the general nervousness and was tense. He kept raising his head and listening to the sounds outside, his brush ears twitching. A few minutes before the broadcast began, another car pulled up to the house. It was Elena. She got out and stood silently by the TV crew's van, her arms crossed over her chest. She couldn't talk him out of it, but she couldn't leave him alone either. She would stay there, just in case. 10 seconds to air, came the voice in his earpiece. Alex took a deep breath. His heart was pounding in his throat. He looked into the cold eye of the main camera. The whole country was watching him now. The whole country was ready to judge him. 5, 4, 3. At that very moment, a white van with no identifying marks, the kind used by animal control, slowly turned onto the driveway leading to Alex's house. Behind it were several more cars full of determined people in camouflage. They were following the call of their idol. On the other side, from the dark, silent forest, 2 shadows glided silently over the rickety fence into the backyard. In one of their hands, metal glinted dimly, a noose on a long pole prepared in advance. 2, 1, air, commanded the director. The show's theme song began to play in Alex's earpiece, and he heard the voice of the host from Moscow. "Good evening. Today we have a guest whose story has taken the internet by storm." Alex opened his mouth to say his first word, but Leo at his feet suddenly raised his head, looked not at the camera but at the door to the back of the house, and let out a low, guttural growl that Alex had never heard in his life. The voice of the host from Moscow continued to sound in Alex's earpiece, but he couldn't hear it anymore. All his attention was focused on Leo. The fur on the lynx's neck stood on end. He crouched down, his muscles tense like coiled springs. The guttural growl turned into a low, vibrating growl that sent a chill down Alex's spine. This wasn't his Leo, the lazy house cat who loved to catch sunbeams. This was a wild animal that sensed mortal danger. The entire film crew froze. The cameraman, holding the camera, frantically shifted the lens from Alex's pale face to the growling predator. The director in the van shouted into the microphone, "What's going on? Alex, talk to us. You're on the air." But Alex couldn't say a word. He knew that Leo never growled without a reason. And that sound was coming from the kitchen, from the back door. Outside, in the backyard, Petrovich froze with a noose in his hands. The plan was simple. Kolyan would quietly pick the lock on the old door. They would go in, throw the noose over the sleeping beast, and leave just as quietly. But the beast was not asleep. It had smelled them. The growling could be heard, even through the thick door. "Damn," Kolyan hissed, stepping back from the lock. "It can smell us. What should we do, Petrovich?" Petrovich thought for a moment. It was too late to retreat, and besides, it wasn't his style. "Break it down," he barked. "Let it make noise. It'll be easier in the commotion." Kolyan leaned heavily against the door with his shoulder. The old wood creaked. At the same time, another drama was unfolding at the main gate. A white van blocked the road. People poured out of it and the cars behind it. There were about 20 of them. Most were young, hot-headed guys, fired up by the guards' speeches. They saw the bright lights and TV vans and realized they had come to the right place. "There he is, the animal killer," someone shouted. The crowd moved toward the gate. Elena, standing by the van, stepped toward them. "Stop! Who are you? What are you doing here? Who are you? Are you defending the torturer?" A guy with burning eyes shouted aggressively at her. "I'm a veterinarian. I demand that you disperse immediately. You are breaking the law." "Our law is justice," someone shouted from the crowd. "We've come to free the lynx." The situation was heating up. Several people began to shake the flimsy gate. Inside the house, the sound of a door breaking sounded like a gunshot. Leo sprang from his seat. In one leap, he flew over the sofa and found himself in front of the kitchen doorway, transformed into a furious, growling mass of muscle. Alex, snapping out of his stupor, shouted, "Leo, don't!" He rushed after him. The film crew recoiled in panic, but the cameraman instinctively continued filming. The back door flew off its hinges, and Kolyan's figure appeared in the doorway. Seeing the 30-kilogram lynx rushing at him with its mouth bared, he let out a thin, panicked squeal and recoiled, stumbling and falling. Petrovich, standing behind him, dropped the noose and pulled an old but reliable hunting rifle from his belt. He had no intention of using it, just took it with him in case he needed to scare the animal off. But now, seeing the fury of the beast defending its home, he realized that things were not going according to plan. Outside, the noise of the struggle and growling mingled with the cries of the crowd. The gate gave way and swung open with a crash. Activists poured onto the site. At that moment, another car pulled up, an old Neva belonging to the local animal control officer, who had been called by one of the neighbors, alarmed by the noise. The officer, an elderly and tired man, saw the crowd storming the house and realized he couldn't handle it alone. He immediately called the police on his radio. All the events merged into one nightmarish, chaotic moment. The whole country saw the shaky images live on TV. Alex rushing around the room, a growling lynx, a broken door, and someone's shadow in the doorway. The presenter in the studio commented helplessly, "We're having some technical difficulties. It looks like our guest is under attack." Standing in the backyard, Petrovich realized he only had seconds. He saw people running past the main window and heard screams. Everyone would be here soon. He raised his rifle. He wasn't aiming at the animal. He was aiming at the large, unprotected living room window. He fired. There was a deafening crash. The sound of shattering glass filled the air. The plan was simple: panic and confusion, during which he could grab his partner and escape into the forest. But he hadn't counted on one thing. At that moment, Alex was running toward that very window, trying to intercept Leo. He saw the glint of the barrel aimed at his house. And in that split second, as the poacher's finger pulled the trigger. There was not a single thought in his head. Only instinct. The same instinct that had made him pick up a dying lynx in the forest a year ago. He didn't think about his life, fame, or money. He only saw the threat to his Leo. He jumped, forward and to the side, shielding the lynx, which had just turned around at the sound of the shot. All that millions of viewers saw on live TV was like slow motion. Alex flying through the air, shielding the animal, his body jerking from the invisible blow. And then he fell to the floor, right onto the shards of broken glass. Above him, baring its fangs, stood a huge lynx, ready to tear apart anyone who approached its human. The camera, thrown to the floor by the terrified cameraman, continued to film, broadcasting this silent scene across the country. Silence. Only in Alex's earpiece, lying on the floor, did the presenter continue to mumble confusedly. The silence after the shot rang in his ears. It was thick, heavy, and lasted only a couple of seconds. But in those seconds, an eternity passed. And then, the world exploded with sound. Outside, there were piercing whistles and shouts of, "Police! Everyone stay where you are!" The crowd of activists who had stormed the house instantly lost their righteous anger. Seeing the police running toward them and hearing the gunshot, they scattered, trying to hide in the darkness. Elena, who had instinctively ducked at the moment of the shot, was the first to burst into the house. She jumped over the abandoned camera and wires, her gaze immediately finding Alex lying on the floor. "Ambulance! Call an ambulance, quick!" she shouted to the television crew, who were huddled fearfully against the wall. Leo stood over Alex like a stone statue, growling lowly. He wouldn't let anyone near him. "Leo, good boy, quiet," Elena said to him in a calm, confident voice, slowly approaching him. "It's me, Leo. I'll help you. Quiet, baby." In the backyard, Petrovich realized that the game was over. He saw the flashing lights of police cars in the windows and grabbed Kolyan by the collar, who was whimpering in fear and pain from his dislocated ankle. "Get up! Into the woods, quick!" They rushed into the safety of the darkness, but it was too late. A police officer with a dog was already circling the house from the other side. Loud barking, the command, "Take him!" And a minute later, both poachers were lying face down on the ground, handcuffs clicking above them. Meanwhile, Elena, inch by inch, made her way to Alex. Leo, recognizing her scent and voice, stopped growling but did not move away, continuing to sniff anxiously at his motionless master. Elena saw blood soaking through Alex's t-shirt on his side. "Shotgun." "He was hit by buckshot," she whispered. Alex was conscious, but in deep shock. He stared at the ceiling and tried to say something, but only a wheeze came out of his throat. The medics who arrived, seeing the mess, flatly refused to enter. Elena had to administer first aid herself, following the doctor's instructions to stop the bleeding while the security guards prepared a cage and a tranquilizer gun. That night became the top news story in the country. Live footage taken by a discarded camera was broadcast non-stop on all channels. Alex's self-sacrifice, covering the animal with his body, and the fury and devotion of the lynx standing over its wounded owner. This silent scene made a much greater impression on people than thousands of words. Public opinion, which just yesterday had been ready to tear Alex apart, did a complete U-turn. He instantly went from being a brute to a hero, and the main villain became the guardian of nature. His calls for an assault, his photo at home, his harassment. All of this now looked like direct incitement to violence that almost ended in tragedy. An avalanche of hate poured onto his blog. Thousands of people unfollowed him every minute. His sponsors began to terminate their contracts with him. The Guardian empire, built on hypocrisy and hype, collapsed live on air, just like Alex's broadcast. Alex survived. The bullet grazed him, missing his vital organs. He spent several weeks in the hospital, not knowing what had happened to Leo. The uncertainty tormented him. He was not allowed to use his phone, and his room was guarded from intrusive journalists. His only visitor was Elena. She came every day, bringing fresh news and silent support. She told him that Leo had been temporarily placed in a quarantine enclosure at the reserve. "He's under terrible stress," she said. "He's hardly eating. He just sits by the fence and stares at the road. He's waiting for you." She also told him about the fate of the others. The poachers were charged not only with poaching, but also with attempted murder. A case was brought against Stanislav Komsky for inciting mass riots. Alex's trial became the most high-profile event of the year. The courtroom was packed with journalists. The case was unprecedented. On the one hand, there was a gross violation of the law on the keeping of wild animals. On the other, there was an incredible story of rescue and attachment, witnessed by the whole country. Alex's lawyer was hired by the same TV channel that had organized the broadcast as compensation for the failure and moral damage. Elena appeared in court as an expert witness. She methodically and dryly explained to the court, using facts, why Leo could not be released into the wild. He is imprinted on humans. He considers himself, if not a human, then a member of the human family. Returning to the forest would be a death sentence for him. He simply would not survive. Keeping him in a regular zoo, in a small cage, after the bond he had with the defendant, would lead to severe depression and a slow death for the animal. The main argument of the defense was a petition signed by several million people. People demanded that Leo be allowed to stay with Alex. On the day of the verdict, Alex stood before the judge, ready for anything. He was prepared to go to prison, pay any fine, just to know that Leo would be okay. The judge, an elderly man with tired eyes, read the verdict slowly and monotonously. He found Alex guilty of breaking the law. He imposed a huge fine and 100 hours of community service. Alex's heart sank. Then the judge looked up from his papers and said something no one expected. However, taking into account the exceptional circumstances of the case, the public outcry, and the experts' conclusion that the animal cannot be adapted to the wild, the court rules the lynx named Leo is to be placed in the care of Alexei Volkov. Within 6 months, using funds raised during a charity marathon organized by public foundations, an enclosure that meets all the standards and requirements for keeping wild animals is to be built on the defendant's property. The veterinary service of the reserve, represented by Elena Petrova, shall be responsible for monitoring compliance. There was a moment of silence in the courtroom. Then it erupted into applause. Alex stood there, unable to believe his ears. He looked at Elena. She was smiling. It was the first time he had seen her smile since they had met. The final scene, the end of summer, a warm, golden evening. Alex is sitting on the terrace of his renovated house. Elena is sitting next to him, and they are drinking tea together. The scar on Alex's side still aches when the weather changes, but it doesn't matter anymore. A huge enclosure surrounded by a high fence now stands on his property. Inside are trees, rocks, and a small pond. It is a small piece of real forest. His forest. Leo is lying on a large wooden platform made in the shape of a sofa. He is lazily squinting at the setting sun. Then he looked at Alex, and something like recognition and calm flashed in his amber eyes. He hadn't become a wild beast, but he was no longer a prisoner within 4 walls. He was just Leo, the only lynx in the world who thought he was a human and who had found his place in this strange world. Alex picked up the camera and pointed it at Leo. But now he wasn't shooting a funny video for the internet. He was starting to shoot a big documentary about love, responsibility, and how the line between man and beast is sometimes not based on appearance, but on the heart. What do you think happened to Leo in the end? Did he remain forever attached to humans? Or did his wild instincts begin to awaken in his new enclosure?